A Reformed Poverty Index with Keegen and Kathleen.
Poverty is a lack of the capability to live minimally decently in a given environment. This lack is multidimensional and different for every person, and should be measured accordingly. Poverty should be defined as the struggle to have consistent access to education, adequate shelter, nutritious food, appropriate clothing, utilities, social services, and an ability to engage with their community on equal footing. The capabilities approach was created by Martha Nussbaum and Amartya Sen, and it is a measure based on people and their abilities instead of their income. According to this approach, there are many aspects that go into someone being poor or in poverty. A stable income can be a huge contributor, but it is never the only contributor. People in poverty struggle financially, physically, and mentally, although most people ignore their mental and physical struggles. The capabilities approach is dedicated to also measuring people's mental stability. Nussbaum specifically said, the approach is concerned with entrenched social injustice and inequality. There are some resources that people who are impoverished do not have regular access to, resources the capability approach deems as crucial to a dignified life. Nussbaum also determined 10 central capabilities for determining standards for poverty and dignity. These central capabilities include bodily health, play, affiliation, and more. Together, these capabilities measure individuals' mental, physical, social, and financial stability. By being able to determine who can obtain the resources they need, we can see who is in poverty in a more accurate way than income alone.
Following the abstract, the capabilities approach offers substantial insight into both poverty and the wider concept of human dignity. This theory is not perfect. Which capabilities are most important for dignified, non-impoverished life is contested even amongst capability theorists. The classification of some capabilities as more important than others, or as Martha Nussbaum called them, central, necessarily implies others are less important. This requires moral or cultural judgments that not all may agree with and will likely be imperfect to some degree. However, this is required as not all capabilities are of equal importance. The capability to own a luxurious home on the beach is not as important to one's life as having a sufficient and nutritious meals every day, although both food and shelter are very important for a dignified, non-impoverished life. Capabilities can also be difficult to measure, sometimes only measurable with proxies. Such proxies can include surveys of an individual's perceived capabilities. Another proxy which is helpful for many quantitatively definable capabilities, like nutritious food, is a study of what capability theorists call functionings, capabilities that have been realized. It can be difficult to know what capabilities are truly available to someone at a given time, given that capabilities can only be turned into functionings if there is both an internal capability and the external context of choice that allows them to realize that capability, and then that individual has to have the will to do so. Functionings, therefore, are an imperfect capture of capabilities, but are sometimes the only reliable proxies. Additionally, with long-term trends in data on functionings, things where one group of people may have functionings at a lower rate than others, can be useful if studying groups, people are being denied a capability itself on a larger scale, whether that be societally, legally, or economically. Even with these limitations in mind, however, approaching poverty from the lens of the capabilities available and denied to those in poverty provides a functional look at the material and emotional conditions that exist around the world. Understanding the actual material conditions people are living in is an important part in being able to measure and subsequently address poverty. Robert Rector, in his 2011 Heritage Foundation article titled Air Conditioning, Cable TV, and an Xbox, What is Poverty in the United States Today?, writes that a majority of the poor in America have air conditioning, cable TV, and a host of other modern amenities, amongst which he also lists refrigeration, one or more cars, and one or more VCR players, which at the time of his writing were seen as a modern invention, not an archaic or nostalgic throwback. He analyzes federal census data based on the official poverty measure, or OPM, to illustrate that most Americans under the poverty line are not in extreme poverty, which he defines as including homelessness and extreme food insecurity. Although he does also imply that most people not living in extreme poverty should not perhaps be considered in poverty at all. However, his definition of this extreme poverty does match fairly closely with the UN's extreme poverty threshold of $2.15 a day for a family member in a household, which is not a reality for most Americans in poverty.
In Rector's argument, he makes a lot of oversights regarding the current state of American poverty. Firstly, he does not consider to what degree these amenities he claims are proof of economic well-being are actually necessities to participate in the modern economy. American infrastructure, both urban and rural, is created with cars in mind, and public transportation is simply insufficient for many daily needs. Computers and internet access, more so than when he was writing, but even to a large degree in his own time, are often needed for engaging with corporations, shopping, medical care, education, and just so much more. Without some of these amenities, interaction with the rest of non-impoverished society becomes remarkably difficult. Furthermore, while the data he was working with did show that many Americans below the OPM's poverty line did have enough to eat most of the time, he does not analyze to what degree this is due to food benefit programs like free and reduced school lunches, SNAP and WIC benefits, and much more. He also does not consider if they are living in food deserts or otherwise have restricted access to nutrition. Let us imagine two different families, one who is in a more affluent town but is currently experiencing severe income deprivation as one or both parents have lost their jobs, and another who is in a poorer rural community that has little access to food, but who is personally quite wealthy. In Rector's argument, so long as both are not consistently missing meals, they are not in an impoverished state. Yet, for the family whose income is limited, they're not able to afford nutritious food, leading to malnutrition and all the detrimental effects that entails. And the family who is wealthier, however, also faces a struggle Rector does not even acknowledge or analyze, that of living in food deserts. In this food desert, access to food is extremely limited. They may not have consistent access. They may not have nutritious food available, or is simply too far away from their home to get food consistently every day without putting a burden on their whole life and schedule. These all may be true, even though this family is technically wealthier and far above the poverty line. In both these cases, while both families aren't missing meals consistently, these meals are placing a substantial burden on their life, and nutritious meals may be all but impossible. In his analysis, both seem to be completely fine, but on a deeper look, looking at what he ignores, we see that both positions are in food-related poverty. Hence, we believe it is crucial to take a more nuanced look at poverty than his reductive position does. To his credit, the more nuanced supplemental poverty measure, or SPM, was less widely used at his time of writing, and if you were to analyze the SPM against OPM data, this would have just clarified the discrepancy between the people below the OPM poverty line who are also getting sufficient amounts to eat, in theory, disregarding nutrition, burden, etc. However, even with this in mind, the SPM is not capturing the true capabilities tied to those in poverty, education, mental well-being, social inclusion, and importantly, nutrition. Neither forms of these poverty experienced by the families in our thought experiment would be captured by the SPM, despite this poverty directly harming their well-being. This is because ultimately the SPM and OPM are not designed to capture the full range of capabilities relevant to poverty, rather approximate poverty based on income or income and tax benefits and welfare benefits such as the SPM, SNAP, and WIC calculations. As I said before, we do not believe poverty is purely financial, making both the OPM and SPM inherently flawed. They cannot capture the true shape of poverty. The UN's Multidimensional Poverty Index, or MPI, which was designed with the capabilities approach to poverty in mind, is generally better for understanding poverty, especially when trying to understand global and extreme poverty. The MPI measures 3 dimensions of poverty: health, education, and living standards. Health includes nutrition and child mortality, and education includes both school attendance and years of schooling, and standards of living includes sanitation, electricity, drinking water access, housing, assets, and the types of cooking fuels used. This index focuses on weighing various factors that influence how individuals and households interact with the world, as well as their basic human needs. These indices they focus on are especially relevant for understanding extreme global poverty. For example, the focus on cleanliness of cooking fuels is important in many poorer nations, where unclean cooking fuels are sometimes the only available option, but are also harmful to human and/or environmental health. Some issues, however, such as assets, infrastructure, and education, are more universal with all nations, with many states in the US still struggling to meet educational and literacy standards. the MPI does not engage in the reductivism of the OPM, SPM, and Robert Rector, and help give a much more accurate view of poverty, although we believe it still can be improved upon.
We believe an accurate measure of poverty can be determined through a combination of some of the MPI's indices and Nussbaum's 10 central capabilities. We will get the information from these measurements through surveys, census, and economic data. We took 7 indicators from the MPI because we believe these are extremely important in determining who is in poverty and to what degree. First, nutrition is important for every individual and can be hard to achieve depending on income and access. In many countries, nutritious food is more expensive than junk food and can be harder to prepare. Nutritious food can also be harder to find if you do not live near a farmer's market or a dependable grocery store. Next, child and maternal mortality rates are important in determining the health of a family as well as the access to and quality of healthcare. It is important to know how many years of schooling individuals have and how often they attend. There are outward conditions that can make it hard for individuals to go to school, like needing to work to support their families. Everyone should have the ability to be educated if they want to be. But if they are unable to pursue the amount of schooling that they wish to, we believe that they are in a form of poverty that is not purely economic. The ability to have housing is also extremely important because of the stability and protection of a home offers. It is important that everyone has reliable income and assets to be able to interact with the economy around them. The infrastructure surrounding individuals, including sanitation, drinking water, electricity, and more, is also important for understanding how the society and environment around people supports them. We also used 3 of Nussbaum's central capabilities in our plan. First, we think life expectancy is important to measure because everyone deserves to be healthy and have access to health care, crucial to living a good life. It is also crucial for everyone to have affiliations with the community around them, both for the mental and economic support these communities offer to every engaged individual. Positive affiliations are important for everyone's mental health. Finally, entertainment and rest are also crucial for people's sanity and health. No one should be expected to work all day and never have any free time to have fun and relax, develop as a child, or spend time with their family. Therefore, the best way to measure poverty is through this combination of the Multidimensional Poverty Index and Nussbaum's central capabilities into a reformed poverty index.
Argument, we do make a number of contentious claims, such as the use of minimal decency as our standard for poverty. We use this philosophical concept because it reflects both the objective human dignity that everyone has, and it must be treated accordingly to, and reflects changes in environmental and material conditions. For example, someone living 200 years ago was not impoverished for lacking a telephone, but in America nowadays, many jobs require a computer, cell phone, and consistent internet access. As such, the concept of minimal decency both responds to the objective human value that everyone has and must be treated according to, and reflects the changing conditions of the world that they live in. We also use these 10 indices specifically because we believe they reflect both on material conditions and human dignity. It is important to know both the physical survival needs as well as the mental, emotional, and social needs that everyone has, so that we can then address their needs specifically. The basic resources to stay alive are crucial. You need food, nutritious food, water that is clean and near to you. You need shelter that is substantial and sustainable and is reliable. But sacrifices must be made for these things in our economy, and these sacrifices must be kept in mind. Imagine someone who is working 3 jobs, working 16 hours a day or more, just to pay the bills and get groceries every month. If they're never having time for rest or fun, not seeing their friends, not able to relax or even interact with their children if they have them, they are living a rather horrible life, even though their economic needs are technically being met. They are only surviving, but they may likely fall into depression, anxiety, or other mental illnesses, and we believe that these are still forms of poverty that should be addressed. They are not starving, and Robert Rector therefore would say that they are living sufficiently well. but we believe that this life does not reflect their inherent dignity, and accordingly they are in a form of poverty. We believe every single one of these 10 indices is important for a dignified and worthy life. Therefore, they are included. Thank you.